Welcome back to NoPlan. Today we're talking about my ideal home theater setup that really is not going to break the bank. I don't have all that much money into it, but I am a cinephile. I love movies very much. It's like you've got your own private theater, which is amazing. So, my setup consists of a homemade actual projector screen, which is quite awesome. I made this out of some very thin plywood. I think it's 1/8" plywood, and I just did a very matte white paint on it. I did not get any kind of special projector paint, and I really haven't needed it. It's been really, really good. And then the borders are actually just masked off and painted black on the same sheets of plywood. In fact, one thing that's kind of interesting is I did have to marry two pieces of plywood together because these were 4x8 sheets, and it was not the correct size or aspect ratio. So what I did have to do, you can see very lightly here, I've got a little bit of a line, and I'll be sanding that down and smoothing it over at some point, but you can just barely see it, so it's not that big of a deal. And then of course this shelf that I've got right here for my movies, this I also made, and it was made out of unpressure treated, 1x8s, and it holds plenty of Blu-rays. There are at least 450 movies here, and guess what? This isn't gonna go off of my streaming platform anytime soon. When I wanna watch the movie, it's gonna be there.
Boom. Roasted.
I gotta just push that in. Now, audio is something that is in flux right now. I definitely do wanna get a better audio setup. These are just some basic Logitech computer speakers, and they really don't sound too bad. Like when you're watching the movie, it doesn't affect it so much that you're just like, it's awful. But it is a 2.1 audio system. The subwoofer is down at the bottom of the shelf, and then I've got the two speakers up here, and I've got the controller up here in the center, and you can control the volume.
Yeah, and that one's not my favorite.
Just using the rocker that's on there, and of course power on and off for the speakers. Cable comes up the side to the ceiling, and I did not feel like crawling into my attic, so I got these cable hiders, which runs all the way back to my media setup. So this is my media setup. It's not anything too complicated. It is a PS4 Pro, kind of out of date maybe a little bit, but it does great at playing Blu-rays, which is pretty much all it really does because I'm not playing PS4 games very often. It does do great at, being a YouTube machine, stuff like that, but really I could get away with a Roku and a Blu-ray player. Which is probably what's gonna end up happening at some point. This is my Projector box. This is my emulator machine. This one's actually kind of cool. I mean, it was just being thrown out of some office space, and the guys were like, hey, you want this computer? It doesn't work. And I was like, hey, it doesn't work? That sounds like a job for me. I brought it home, and all I did was throw in a Projector Linux SSD into it, and it booted up, and it worked great. So all the issues they were having were software, apparently. This can play Wii games, GameCube games, original Xbox games. It does it all flawlessly. It's really a decent machine for what it is. I mean, it's like 2nd gen i7, I think, with integrated graphics, and it does all of that fine. And then I have an HDMI switcher that everything goes into. This can't handle up to 4K signal, but I have 3 different things hooked up to it. I have a Roku, PS4 Pro, and the emulator, and all I gotta do to change the input on my projector is just hit that button and it will change its input. And then that goes directly up the cable organizer straight to the projector. The most important piece of any home theater setup, of course, is the projector, and mine is decent. It's not anything crazy. It is just kind of a standard Optima 1080p projector. I was very particular to ensure it was a true 1080p because you can find a lot of times, even today, you'll find projectors that are like standard definition, but they're 1080p compatible. So be very careful when you're watching out for that. But this projector has done a very good job. It actually is pretty bright considering the amount of light you can have in the room and all that kind of stuff, but you are probably gonna wanna have the lights off for a full-on movie. Even when you do have a pretty decent projector, one thing you are gonna wanna invest in, some blackout blinds. I've spent under 600 bucks on this, I would say. It only has the ability to zoom and everything. Keystone is not done optically at all. It's all done digitally. So it's definitely a mid-tier projector. I will upgrade at some point. I want probably true 4K. I want something a little bit brighter, maybe a little bit better contrast. But this thing still does a great job, and it's very enjoyable to watch movies on. So I'm not trying to get out of it too quickly. So the big question is, how much did this cost? Well, it might not be as much as you would think. The projector was actually under $600 at the time. I'm sure you could even find better deals these days. The speakers are probably about $75 to $100. Truthfully, I pulled them off an old computer setup I had anyway, so they're technically free. Cables, about another $75 to $100. The screen was about $150 to $200 with all the parts. And of course, this was probably another $100 or so. So we're probably staying around the $1,000 mark for this whole setup, not including the media players, because that will vary on your setup. So this is amazing. And really, when you think about $1,000, that's not bad for a 120-inch screen, because if you're gonna go out and get even a 75-inch 4K OLED or something like that, yeah, it's gonna be a beautiful picture being OLED, but it's only 75 inches and it's gonna cost you about $2,500 to $3,000 at least. And I will say this is a very important piece when it comes to using a projector. It looks different than a TV. The way the light all melds together, it doesn't do like a TV with individual pixels and everything. You're still talking about a digital medium, sure, but it goes into almost like an analog type quality to it. There's something about projectors that is just amazing and makes me not want to ever leave them for my home theater setup. Do you have a home theater setup actually? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe to NoPlan. Thanks for watching.